Good morning, everybody. Hope please use your headsets so we could hear well. Hello. Good morning. We are now here in the Ocean Pavilion welcoming you and thank you for joining us in this session about the exploring the blue economy in Africa and developing nations. This is a very important topic for all the developing nations, including African states. The blue economy represents a transformative opportunity for Africa and developing nations to harness the potential of their marine resources sustainability. This event investigates the implication, challenges, and promising pathways associated with fostering a thriving blue economy in this region. The blue economy can serve as a catalyst for economic growth, job creations, food security, and ecosystem preservation. So in this event, we will try to approach the balances of economic prosperity with environmental stewardship, aiming to inspire actionable strategies that propel Africa and developing nation towards a sustainable future blue economy. I'm Suzanne El-Gharabawi, the Vice President of the Marine Hazard Mitigation Center of Egypt and also the Vice Chair of IOC Africa. I will be the moderator for this session. And our team panelists are estimate panelists, Dr. Vladimir Repenin from Scripps, Dr. Calabra T. Ramo from Woods Hole, Professor Margaret Leinen from Scripps, and Professor Amr Hamouda from the Marine Hazard Mitigation Center of Egypt. We will go directly to our first panelist, Dr. Vladimir Repenin, advisor from Scripps Institution of Oceanography and the former executive secretary of the IOC of UNESCO. Dr. Vladimir will give his talk today about a brief definition and scope of the blue economy and the key components that relevant to Africa and developing nations, and also will talk about the promising opportunity for sustainable growth in Africa. Please welcome Dr. Vladimir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Susan, for inviting me and also for the introduction. I used to be a mathematician, so I need to start with definitions. That was exactly what Susan asked me to do, to first of all, introduce to you the notion of blue economy. But we cannot think about blue economy without, first of all, mentioning the green economy. And the notion of green economy is I have to probably also look here. So this is, according to UNEP, is defined as economy of low carbon, resource efficiently, and social inclusiveness. I don't like this actually definition. And there were many people who wrote books. Many organizations who started to develop the notion of blue economy. They even coined the roadmap to blue economy. To green economy, and if you look at this roadmap, you will see market economy in its manifestation through competition. You will see various kinds of accounting. You will see work for investment, zeal for investment, and many other things. But the thing is that, this approach actually thinks about environment as a resource. So, in terms of moral attention to what is really important, because, we have now COP29, and there are so many things that are kind of decided by negotiation. Ethics is very, very important. So the existing roadmaps for basically green economy are very much, I think, related to market competition and benefit generation. So what is missing there is this sense of fairness, the position of developing states and things like this. This needs to change. So then, the idea of sustainable development, I think, makes it possible to define better the notion of green economy. This is the economy that is for the environment, it is for people, and of course, economic considerations are very, very important there. So now, with that approach, that is, I think, new understanding of green economy, we can basically very easily define what is blue economy. Blue economy is the ocean component of the green economy. But I have to say, this is the title of this workshop. But in reality, of course, many countries do not agree with the term blue economy. I know many countries that would like to coin it a sustainable ocean economy. So this is the definition. Let's move forward. And this is about Africa. I would like you to look at this integrative map of what is happening in Africa. Africa, FDI is just investment into Africa. Overseas aid is essential. Then African diaspora is sending remittances. And this is basically the plus of that budget. Minuses are very much related to exploitation of Africa by various corporations. There is also very significant illegal economy that is very, very close to what we expect is the damage in the result of climate change. So what is happening in Africa is basically being exploited. It is suffering from climate change that is already on Africa and on us. And Africa is not prepared because, the whole setup is actually organized in such a way that this Africa is going to suffer because of the internal problems, because of the external pressures, and also because of the climate change. So the big question is what to do about this. When we think about ocean economy in Africa, we have to, I think, translate this into the vision of the global ocean economy. And the global ocean economy right now is generating in the world around $2 trillion US dollars annually. And the potential is to grow maybe basically in order of magnitude. This is very, very significant potential. Everyone knows this. And actually ocean economy is moving forward in more ecological dimensions and faster than the land-based economy. So Africa, the current estimate of the African economy, GDP, is of the ocean economy is around 300 billion US dollars, which is basically an order of magnitude. But when we can compare population of the world, population of Africa, it's less than proportionate part of Africa in the world. It gives Africa 50 million jobs. And there is an estimate that by 2030, that economy can grow to around 400 billion US dollars. But now if we project the existing growth of ocean global economy by the year 2030, this is my own estimate, it will be 4-5 trillion US dollars. So African economy is projected to grow slower than the world ocean economy. So that, I think, is first of all reflecting that situation, the reason, the climate change, because ocean economy is really dependent on climate change. And the projections that exist in the ocean economy basically say if we solve the issue of climate change, then the economy is going to flourish. If we don't do this, the economy is going to grow much slower than in the case of successful resolution of climate change issue. So also, ocean economy, of course, is very importantly a source of reducing carbon emissions, according to the latest estimates of the high-level panel for sustainable ocean economy, including a reduction of production of oil and gas. There is a potential of 35% reduction of emissions that are required to reach 1.5 degree of the Paris Agreement. So, that's the situation. So we have to think about Africa, we have to think how what ocean economy is moving forward, and we need to find ocean-related solutions in the conditions of climate change. So in the way kind of financial exploitation, climate change, internal, I call it crime. We can probably find a more political acceptable word for that. But there are opportunities. The opportunities are that the world is changing. There are much better understanding now based on science, how we can objectively project what is going to happen in the ocean, happen with climate and things like this. So there is a potential. So, just to make this long story short, I'm not going to speak about coastal erosion, about fisheries. These are kind of usual things. But I'd like to give a big picture about this. So, basically, ocean has huge potential of solving a lot of issues related to the national things, because ocean very much is a commons. Exclusive economic zones, they communicate. There are transboundary issues. Fish doesn't know the borders between countries, as many people say. And of course, high seas is basically commons. So that common approach may actually facilitate the moving forward of science. And there are different ways of working in the ocean: coastal zone management, maritime special planning, marine protected areas. Very much they are disconnected, but at the same time there is a huge potential of managing the ocean sustainably on the basis of so-called integrated plans, with taking into account carbon adaptation mitigation, climate change adaptation mitigation, decarbonization. So there is a possibility of using the science, and in that particular case, Africa is in very interesting, positive situation, because basically you don't need to redo the whole thing. You can start anew and develop a much more efficient approach to common resolution of climate change and ocean issues on the basis of sustainable ocean planning. So how to move forward? In the decade of ocean science for sustainable development that was launched in 2021, there is basically a roadmap for Africa, and the African community has designed several 9 areas of action. They are presented on the slide. What is really important for Africa to understand is that they are all connected. Ocean management can only be realized if there are ocean observations. The observations are turning into digital twin of the ocean. Then the capacity development has to be focused on the ability to produce ocean observations, digital twin, translate this into ocean management approaches. So basically, with the help of Ocean Decade and the help of African community, the new realization of the climate change and how it impacts on the ocean and common issues that exist in the ocean, opening for Africa a new era, and that can lead to basically flourishing of ocean economy. And this is my last slide. Basically, what Africa needs, and this I'm basing this on the 9 years of working as Executive Secretary of IOC, knowing what is happening in IOC Africa, what is happening on the continent, in other continents, what is happening around in terms of science, in terms of economy, in terms of negotiations. Basically, the approach to biodiversity resolution, development of ocean economy, climate change in Africa is ocean management that is fair, science-based, climate smart, and also, of course, with inclusion of ocean industry. So that's, for me, would be the way, and I hope that my fellow speakers also are going to develop this further. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Vladimir, for your informative presentation and all the opportunities and the key components you had shared with us. Thank you so much. And now it's time to have Dr. Kilarabati Ramakrishna. He is the Director on Ocean and Climate Policy and a Senior Advisor to the President of Woods Hole. Dr. Rama, could you share with us your insights about the government policies that play in promoting the blue economy, and if there is a political models that are successful in other regions rather than Africa? So you could share it with us. Yeah, for you.
Thank you very much, Susan, for that introduction, and importantly for the opportunity for me to be here with such a distinguished panel. It is not only the first session of the day today, but we are addressing issues of relevance to Africa when this ocean pavilion is right across from the Africa pavilion. And Vladimir has done a phenomenal job in outlining an approach by which African nations can benefit from the blue economy, or the emphasis on the ocean that they have. I'm not going to talk about either the definitions or the amount of money that is needed or can be had by following any particular policy. What I would like to talk about upfront is the history of Africa in the climate negotiations and the demands placed time and again, and the disappointment at the end of each time about what Africa managed to get or did not manage to get. And every once in a while, we have a conference of the parties taking place in Africa, and we proudly call it the African COP. And we have leaders from Africa coming and insisting on what needs to be done by the international community. And as you know, I worked in the Green Climate Fund for a period of time, and it is probably the largest climate fund in the world today. And we had rules and regulations that stipulate that not only 50% of the money should be saved for adaptation, but within that, 50% of the money should go to Africa, small island developing states, and the least developed countries. So it is not for lack of trying, but the amount of support that African nations have received so far is not anywhere close to what is needed. Calling something an African COP is not going to do it, So, but we have now approaches like the panel that you have put together, and what we might be able to advance. And there are things that are being done by NIPAD and the African Union. And as you know, G20 presidency is currently held by Brazil, and it will be going to South Africa. And I had the opportunity to be in Rio at the Ministerial Conference of Environment and Climate Change and Sustainability, and had an opportunity to speak with South African minister. And he proudly called it also the African G20. So what I want to do is to move away from these symbolic gestures, where you call something where the world community comes together as belonging to Africa. And we really need to move into the specifics of what Africa can do by itself. And the Kenyan president and the South African president in particular have talked about the blue economy as the potential opportunity to make that difference. So the first thing that I want to advance is what we need to do, through the kind of initiative that you have introduced here, is to look at what exactly can African countries do on their own, not because there is a decision in the international community and funding opportunities exist, etc. But what it is that they can do. And there is a lot that they can do. And which is one point that the Kenyan president has made time and again, particularly with reference to blue economy. Vladimir talked at length about the amount of money that is possible. And one of the recent calculations is that the blue economy right now is could be about $2.5 trillion and can be up to $3 trillion by 2030. Obviously, it is not tapped. And so what is it that needs to be done? So when we talk about public-private partnership, we generally talk about the government and the private sector, which is fine because the government has a huge role in creating an enabling environment. So my first recommendation for African countries is create that enabling environment. Not only enable the private sector in their country to come up with ideas, and once those ideas are there, we can find money for it. But then enable them to reach out to other entities. You have a number of us here who have those partnerships, and we can draw from that. I'm sure Margaret will talk about Scripps Institution and then their public-private. Here, we in Woods Hole, we have that. We have that not only in terms of marketing ideas and creating a huge impact, but even without a monetary aspect involved in it, we have partnerships where we try to solve a problem. We have Resilient Woods Hole Initiative. It's not just Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, but all the companies, restaurants, everybody that is there working together to deal with sea level rise, how to build resilience. So Africa can do that, by its own activities. And then this ocean pavilion is nothing but a partnership of various oceanographic institutions. And my debt of gratitude to Margaret in particular for strategizing on how to bring ocean to climate negotiations. I vividly remember both of us standing at a stand-up desk in Glasgow and talking about, we need to bring this to the climate negotiations, and we've been doing that, and you've been partnering with us since then from the get-go. So benefit from these partnerships. And the partnerships is not just about having a meeting and a publication, but taking ideas and working with them. So we have several examples of that. The big thing, I'm sure Margaret will touch on it, is about ocean observations. Getting a handle on what you have. Though we have had Law of the Sea Convention now for 42 years, we still have many of the issues unresolved. Exclusive economic zones delimitation is not there. Continental shelf delimitation is not there. Those decisions will come, but we don't need to wait for it. With the partnerships that you have here, you can move forward by talking about the ocean observations. And of course, we have last year's Dubai Declaration and this year's Baku Declaration emphasizes a way forward in terms of how to do that. And then I worked, as I mentioned, in the Green Climate Fund, and one of the things is the Green Climate Fund does not come up with ideas on what countries need to do. Countries have to come up with the ideas that they have and how the support from an entity like Green Climate Fund would help. So you need to do that. You need to, by the kind of partnerships that we have here, you can develop those ideas and move forward. There are lots of new publications that have come that talk generally about the role of the developing countries. And there are opportunities that can be cashed in to benefit African nations. One of the huge surprises for me sitting in the Green Climate Fund was we had an allocation of $1 million per country per year just to develop proposals. And when I joined the organization, I thought we would be flooded constantly by the 130 plus countries. The real situation is we had to go out and tell them, we have this money, you can apply for it, this is how you can get it. I don't understand why that is the case, but Africa can benefit definitely, in terms of developing those proposals with the kind of partnerships that we have here and how to work with them. So I'm sure there will be questions on it, and I look forward to answering those questions. But my key message is don't worry too much about the definitions at this stage. Don't worry too much about the quantity of aid that needs to be there. Begin understanding the resource that you have and how you can exploit it in a manner that continues to keep the ocean health intact and contributes to communities that depend on the coastal ocean and move the country forward, with ideas that you acquire and partnerships that you build through entities like the Ocean Pavilion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rama, for this, for your insights, and also for all of your recommendations towards the African nations, especially for the partnership and how we could benefit from the project and the funds that already published for African nations. And now it's time to have with us Professor Margaret Leinen, the Director of Scripps Institution of Oceanography, and also a Vice Chancellor for the Marine Science of University of California at San Diego. Professor Margaret will talk to us about the type of investments are needed to develop the blue economy in Africa, and with special care about the innovation and also how the climate change impact could affect the strategies that can be implemented to mitigate these effects. Please welcome Professor Margaret.
Thank you, Susan. It's such a pleasure to be with you again here at the Ocean Pavilion. I'm going to talk about this from a scientific perspective. What can the scientific community do to help address these big issues of really energizing the blue economy, and what are our responsibilities as scientists as we do that? And I'm going to give one example, and it's very much related to those sectors that Vladimir discussed, BBNJ and biodiversity, marine spatial planning, fisheries, and aquaculture. So a big segment of the economy. And a real key to that, of course, is being able to preserve understand the resources, preserve those resources in a sustainable fashion. And that requires understanding what's there. And a real impediment to being able to engage in marine spatial planning, to engage in conserving biodiversity, has been the nature of the observations that we were able to make and that Africa was able to make because of the cost of observation. If you're trying to observe the biodiversity in a large marine protected area or in a coastal area that's used for fisheries, it's expensive. Fish stock assessment is expensive, and it has to be done every year. And determining whether your marine protected area is really effective, whether it's protecting the species that are there, requires repeat observation. And this has been a real stumbling block for Africa. Doing fish stock assessments, catching fish, using video, all of these techniques are really expensive, and to keep doing them regularly is really expensive. But there is a tremendous opportunity in front of Africa in this area. In the same way that Africa didn't invest in miles of wire for telecommunications, and it jumped the technology, it has the ability to do that now with being able to observe biology for fisheries, for marine protected area, and for marine spatial planning through the use of biomolecular observations. So this is based on the fact that every organism in the ocean releases its DNA into the ocean. Either it excretes material, it dies and the DNA is released, or like fish, it has mucus or some other secretion that goes into the ocean. And one of the things that was amazing to oceanographers was to find just a few years ago that DNA is preserved in the water, and that it lasts in the water for a couple of weeks. So that means that we no longer have to catch fish, photograph fish, kill fish, or try to decipher their acoustics in order to identify them. We simply have to take a sample of the water. So now you've got a much cheaper access, and you can also invoke citizen science, because the collecting of the samples is something that can be done by, just very lightly trained citizen. And the sampling kits can be put together from things you can buy at the drugstore, the grocery store, the hardware store. So this is an opportunity, as Africa took with telecommunications, to jump the technology barrier to be able to assess its marine life, well, fisheries for fisheries directly, marine life for marine spatial planning, and for biodiversity. Early next year, the scientific community will be joining with FAO to have a special workshop for FAO on using environmental DNA and biomolecular techniques for fisheries management. It's the first time this has happened, and we were actually asked by FAO to come to them to talk about not just what we know, but what they need to know as a result of these kinds of measurements in order to manage fisheries with these much cheaper technologies. I think it will be great for fisheries in general, but I think for Africa, it will be a real game changer. So that's just one example here, but it's an example of the way that the scientific community can help Africa get around some of the boundaries, the infrastructure boundaries that have been there for observations of the ocean. I'd also like to just touch briefly on the way we behave as scientists. I think that our traditional way of working has been to essentially find an African colleague, get them to help us get permits to work in African waters, do that in exchange for having an internship or a workshop for training, and then leave with all of our data. And I think that is not going to, it's not going to work anymore. It's not working for Africa, and it can't work for science, because we need the additional scientists who actually understand the environment, who have worked in the environment for a long time, to make good on that data. And that's going to mean that Africa is going to have to demand that we leave not only a few people that have been to a workshop, but infrastructure and technology to be able to continue. So as we come in with materials, leaving the technology capability there, as well as a few people who have been trained. One more piece in this puzzle is the data itself, which of course is the most important part of what scientists of the North take away. And one of the wonderful things about the example that I gave you with biomolecules and eDNA is that there's a requirement for those data to be put into large databases like the Ocean Biology Information System. Thank you. Ocean Biodiversity Information System. Because you need the information from that database to be able to do the analyses. That means that regardless of who takes that data, it's going to be there as a resource. So the other thing that we need to do is leave the capability of not just accessing that data, but analyzing it. And this is another place where the technology is affording us a huge leap forward, and that's through artificial intelligence. Because those databases are so big and they're so rich that we can no longer say, oh, we'll have a graduate student back in the North, put together 2 or 3 data sets. And that allows the artificial intelligence capability for African scientists, as well as for anyone else, to be able to mine that data, the most important part of what's been collected. So I'd like to leave you with those 3 ideas. First, that we're looking at a huge opportunity for Africa to jump the technology barrier to understand biodiversity by using these tools. Second, that we as scientists have to take responsibility to leave infrastructure behind, as well as a few trained people. And third, that we also have to activate the capability of Africa to use artificial intelligence with all of this data, the most important part of what we collect, to be able to manage fisheries, manage marine protected areas and biodiversity and activate marine spatial planning. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Margaret, for your insights and also the key points you just mentioned at the end to wrap up everything and to give us the light or the route to how we should use our resources and work more using the AI and the innovations. And also, I like the idea of the eDNA. It's very, very important and for future generation to work on. Thank you so much. And now it's time to have Professor Amr Hamouda, the President of the Marine Hazard Mitigation Center of Egypt and the Vice Chair of IOC UNESCO. Professor Hamouda will talk to us about the biggest challenges in African nations that faces implementing the Blue Economy initiatives and will give us a success story from Africa about effective leverage from marine resources for sustainable development. Please welcome Professor Hamouda.
Okay. First, thank you, Suzanne, for nice introduction and your work. And also, I need to say thanks for Woods Hole and Scripps for supporting us to be here. And we are starting together from COP27. Thank you very much and special thanks for Rama and Margaret. And also Vladimir from IOC UNESCO, which are working together to support Africa for that. So what I needed to say now, we needed, as our partner has a huge expert about ocean and Africa, so we needed to conclusion about what is the challenge about Africa and what is the suggested solution we needed to Africa. As you know, Africa, it is significant, important for Africa is a blue economy. It is very important for that. And we have also the challenge, not easy. It is a very complex and needed because we have many cluster of working against each other. So what we are now, we require a coordinator to effort the address about that. This is our challenge about Africa, which is very important for for growth Africa as a blue economy, which we needed Africa now. So what is the first challenge about Africa to go forward? So the problem about weak governance and institution framework. This is the Africa countries, we have a problem about the mandate and the policy about the government, what we are looking for, and how can continuous for the think tank support the policy about the government working about continuous and sustainable for blue economy. Also, the problem, we have a weak contact between institution and the government, and we have different complex between them to trust about what is the future we needed and what is the priority working together. So we can solve that institution strengthening, and we needed to integrate a policy of development between institution and the government, and also we needed to build the building capacity for not only for the institution and also for the government, for the decision policy people, which we needed to go forward to support that. Also, the second challenge, what we are, as you know, everybody, we have a huge amount of fisheries, and we have now challenge because the resource of fisheries will be decreased related overfishing about, especially in the north of Africa, in the Mediterranean. We not have a huge amount of fisheries now. We have a problem about the fishery and the growth about the production of fisheries. So we needed not only problem we were working, we needed sustainable of the fishery. We needed to put the limit of the fishery to catch that for Africa because we needed to put the policy for that. So we can management that solution, improve monitoring. We needed road database for the monitoring. We need what is the output we are going, and also we need the regional cooperation between all the African countries to sustainable the resource of fisheries. This is the second point, and also community-based management. Without management between all African countries, we are loose because we need it as now to what is you can management and how can every country can catch about how much you can need it. The third limited this is our partner we can discuss about that, is a limited of financial resource. Without financial resource, we cannot do anything in future. We can't support any program. So what is the problem about the limited of financial resources and the management of these financial resources to put it what we needed from what we have from the finance and what we needed to support what is a priority for the future. So this is a problem about that. So we can needed the African country depended about the public-private partnership to support that, and also international cooperation working together to put it about how can management the available source from the finance to the priority for each country to management that. Also, we needed a finance innovation. It's very important for innovation and the modeling for that we needed for that. Also, infrastructure. African country, as you know, is a developing country. They have weak point about infrastructure and the technology. So what we're looking for, we needed infrastructure development, and also we needed a program of technology about capacity building. And as you know, we don't have enough technology of capacity building to save our resource. So our resource for African country. So what we needed to how can support this capacity building, and also we needed international, regional project cooperation between each country to support and support what we have from resources. Especially now we are going not to the fisheries, we are Africa going now to the mineral exploration besides the oil exploration. This is another challenge. So now we have discovered many oil and gas exploration around Africa. So this is a priority. How can management this region? What is the return back about this exploration, which we are discovering now? Also, as you know, everybody about the climate change and ocean health. As you know, Africa is away from this impact because this is not an industry country. So this is only suffer from the climate change, which will affect about the diversity and the migration of the diversity from toward the warm water, and also this is what is needed for that climate resilience strategy for African country and working. I think IOC supports that, and we have a different program for support that and for climate resilience strategy and roadmap, which Vladimir discussed about. We have a roadmap and we have a 10 challenge about talking about that. So also we have needed support about sustainable marine energy and the research and the database we needed for Africa to discuss what is the priority we needed. And we can discuss as the last point for have a short time. As you know, we have success story in Egypt. Egypt now is a leader of freshwater aquaculture. And now we have this is stable at 1,500,000. Now it should be reached 2 million for production from freshwater aquaculture. So we are having now technology of freshwater aquaculture because we have a problem and the challenge of we don't have enough fresh water. So we needed with the same water increase our production. So we are increase about the technology, about increase the production related. We needed some simple technology about increase the oxygen inside the water, and we can increase the amount of production of fish. So this technology we are transferred to all the neighbor country in Africa, like Uganda, Kenya. We have many mega projects in Kenya and in Nigeria and Uganda, and also now we're starting with Somal about that. We are established many mega projects over there for fresh water, especially with any country have a river, so we can support him how we can make a freshwater aquaculture and with low price. This is, as you know, China is the #1 in the world in aquaculture freshwater. So now Egypt is the #1 in Africa for that. This is responsibility to transfer what we have to all African countries and support that, and also transfer that knowledge and information from the north to the south of Africa. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Hamouda, for sharing the challenges and also sharing with us the success story from Egypt in aquaculture. And now we will open the floor for few questions from the audience, if you have any questions to our estimate panelists. Yes, please.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. This is a question for Margaret. In addition to biodiversity, or like more sampling, more data on biodiversity, are there other like marine observation infrastructures that you think needs to be expanded to better help Africa transition into a blue economy?
Ken, please.
Yes, there's certainly a lot of others. For example, the issue of coastal hazards was mentioned by several groups, and the ability to make accurate predictions of the arrival of severe storms, of other coastal hazards is dependent on the observations that are there. One of the and so developing that very important. Do not use technology or is inexpensive.
Yours is cutting out.
Okay. That we do not have technologies that are as inexpensive as we would like to have. There's been a lot of work on trying to develop much more low-cost samplers for temperature, salinity, et cetera, and also current meters. And I think that the science community has sort of gotten hung up on, these also have to have the same precision and accuracy as we use for the open ocean, and that it's really, really critical. I think that we need to think of sort of two classes of sensors that are sort of research oriented, and sensors that can be used for hazard prediction that absolutely don't need the same level of sophistication and accuracy in prediction. And I think that the science community has finally gotten that idea, but we really need to partner more effectively with the people that are capable of manufacturing those. And I see a little bit of effort here and a little bit of progress, but I think it's one that we need a lot more attention to.
Thank you so much. There are another question from the audience. Yeah, please.
Hi, Amina Sharta. This is weird. I guess this is a question for Margaret and Vladimir. Thank you for your discussion. I was wondering whether you have any ideas of what would be the funding opportunity, because I agree that that knowledge transfer is really important and being able to leave that information and capabilities on the ground. But for those of us who've been trying to work in Africa, it's been really difficult to get funding to support research on our end to do it there, but also to support the local scientists to keep doing the work on the ground. So what are the mechanisms in place to make those relationships easier and that knowledge transfer easier?
Yeah, please. Thank you. Vladimir, can you start?
I will try to start. To some extent, money is a chicken and egg situation. We all know. However, I think Africa is full of money, and African Union has also a lot of money. And this gentleman worked for the Green Climate Fund. So there are some funds, and also I presented to you that graph that shows different sources and sinks of money that exist in Africa. So I think what is really required here is basically a good plan on return on investment. This plan has not been produced yet. Its plan is not yet convincing. But in Africa, in addition, successful is proliferation of maritime special planning, including transboundary maritime special planning. So Africa is starting to manage its seas more sustainably. And for that, of course, actually, in addition to what Margaret said about observations, what is needed I would say, global observations for prediction and local observations for impact studies. So I think in that sense, basically there is a possibility on capitalizing on what exists in the decade in the plan to develop a plan that has also financial dimension, and then you open it up to business. And business in Africa is actually loaning more money than it is paying for debts. So, Africa can also invest internally. So that for me would be, without giving you a precise answer, go there and get this money. That would be my approach.
I would just add to that I think that the science community has not had the really effective arguments about the financial impact of our work. And all of this attention to the blue economy and sort of unpacking that gives us that opportunity because now people understand that there's an opportunity with blue economy. We just have to define how our project contributes directly to that, because we're competing with projects that are very clear. Here's an irrigation project in a particular area that is going to benefit these funds. And what are you going to do when you're the Green Climate Fund and you have that up against a group of oceanographers who can't quite tell us exactly what the impact is going to be?
If I could just add a few words to that. The green economy in the international community came about with UNEP starting this way back in 2008, thereabouts. And it took some time to find its roots. And the blue economy is a relatively more recent origin. And we need to give it a little bit of time, because people are trying to understand what this is about. So the one thing that Peter Thompson used to say is, if you were to just take whatever that we're doing on land and put it in the water and then call it blue economy, that would be a terrible mistake. So we need to come up with new plans. And I think the kind of things that Margaret talked about in her presentation are vital. And once we have that, then use that knowledge. But the point I was trying to make was, there is money. We need to know how to make an application for that money. But more importantly, waiting on that and not exploiting the potential that exists in the countries would be a huge mistake. There is a lot of potential, and then exploit that to the fullest through partnerships, whether it is public-private partnerships or through academic institutions. And I think Margaret's point is absolutely right on. It is not helicoptering in, doing a project and then getting out and think that, capacity is developed is not the way. We need to really think about it differently. And for that, we don't need large sums of billions of dollars. We need the determination that we need to get it right.
So, if there is any other questions from the audience? Okay, please.
Yeah, thank you all for your presentations today. Quick question about this use of eDNA to assess fish stocks. Does it give you an assessment of the maturity of the fish? Because I imagine that's quite important for doing that calculation.
Fish stock assessment is a little more complicated because you have to understand the year classes of the fish. There is discussion about this, and there are ways of making estimates, but they're pretty complicated. We're really talking about fisheries management as opposed to, there are many elements of it. So I think fish stock assessment will get there, but it's going to take a while. But other aspects of fisheries management can absolutely be addressed with the current state of eDNA, metabarcoding, and other techniques.
I need to talk about stock assessment of fisheries. As you know, for the FAO about that, and we have about, for example, about the blue tuna fish. So this is we needed to management what is priority for how much catching for the blue tuna, especially for the Mediterranean and for around Africa. So the problem how each country needed to increase the amount of the catching of the fish, of the blue tuna. So this is a community we make control and the management. This will be, if you needed to open this amount, will be destroyed all the fish tuna in around Africa. So we can management that. We need control for each country. We need how much related to the population, related to the economic situation, related to the facility. What we have, how many boats we have available to come to catch, because some Africa can the amount of catching of the fish tuna make sale and for another country too, because you don't have any facility to catch that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one quick point, and I'm sure Vladimir would like to jump into this as well. This particular conference of the parties is called the Finance COP. And there is this determination that you need to make on a new collective quantified goal. But they would be able to do that if countries were to revise their nationally determined contributions, NDCs, and factor in all these things that we're talking about. So we have a projected number. What is it that we are seeking, and why are we seeking? No, it's not just a number that you pick from the thin air and say, well, we need this much money, and then, make it happen. No, because once you make, well, what is an EDNA cost, and what is the benefit of that to the climate system? And then you would be able to not only build the capacity in the country, and then as and when you do get the resources, know exactly how to use them.
Yeah, that's true.
Just maybe to summarize it in a different way. So EDNA would be, I think, a key important thing for including ocean aspects in the national determined contributions.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm so sorry because they are showing us we need to wrap up, but the discussion is very, very interesting. And thank you all, our estimate panelists, for your insights and the presentations you have there today. You really enrich our session. Thank you. And I like the idea about the EDNA and the innovation and the using of the AI for improving our blue economy or all of our science on all fields. I have to thank you all, Vladimir, Rama, Margaret, and Amr, for accepting to be in our session and for your presentations. And thank you all for being with us today. Thank you so much. I just want to have a group photo with the panelists and this to inform the closure of this session. Thank you so much.